Thank you, Josh. And I'm like you said, I'm here with Will Rose, who has, from my understanding, seen the movie for the first time, but has read the comics first. So a little bit of a different perspective. Will, what can you tell us about your first takes? What stood out to you as different seeing the movie after having already read the comics?
Yeah, I mean, let's think about the creative team on the comics. We have Alan Moore, we have Kevin O'Neill, legends in the comic book industry, and we know Alan Moore from Watchmen, V for Vendetta. We have League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. They are pissed off that they're making their properties in the movies, and they canceled them or disowned them, and even tried to sue for plagiarism. All this kind of stuff. They do not. They Alan Moore does not like his comic book storytelling made into movies. He really doesn't. He's a wizard. He may cast a spell on you. He has weird kinks that show up in his comic books. So yes, the movie was a little tamer, a little bit more early 2000s than Alan Moore 80s and 90s comic book writing. So let's just say that right there. And then let's set the movie in its context. If we think of like waves of and phases of comic book movies. In the 70s, we have the Superman movie, right? In the late 80s, 90s, we have the Batman movies. Early 2000s, we have the X-Men movie, we have Spider-Man movies. There's this resurgence of like, let's make these awesome comics into movies. And then 2003, a year before Hellboy, by the way, League of
So
Extraordinary Gentlemen hits the big screen. And yeah, you could say it's quite different from the comic book. They try to make an action movie with long, drawn out explosions and guns.
yeah.
The characters are there, but the plot is totally different from the graphic novel. The main players and their role and who's the main character in the movie totally different from the graphic novel. And so before you have Avengers Assemble, they try to do some Avengers movie kind of like with League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Hellboy did kind of it better when you get a bunch of freaks and extraordinary people together to do some thwarting of weird people in masks. So anyway, like they tried and they try to get a cast together to assemble a team. As I go back and watch this movie, it's not as bad now as I watch it, knowing where its place is and the phases and what they're trying to do. Like I had fun with it, and I understand there's different parts of this movie. I got explosion and special effects fatigue, and I was like, why are we on this boat for like 30 minutes? And so um yeah, that's my take. It is different from the graphic novel. Read the graphic novel first, and then if you watch this movie, just have fun with it and see its place in the context of the phases of comic book movies and people trying to create moving pictures out of graphic novels. Does that help?
Yeah.
Like just
Yeah.
like Alan Moore in The
So
Watchmen, like he did not want that ever to happen. They tried, and then they made like a TV series. They've tried over and over again, but there's something about Alan Moore that like it's hard to translate to the big screen because it's edgy and
Alan
weird and kinky.
Alan Moore, I feel like just I don't know if you ever watch his movies. It just seems like he just everything he creates is strictly for the page.
Yep, yep. He's a master with the comic book panels and word bubbles. Yep.
So I'm gonna push back on two things Will said.
Okay.
One, I don't think the plot is completely different. I think a lot of the same parts of the plot are there, and that they had the same antagonist, and he was still doing his antagonizing for the same reason. But
Right.
for the most part, yeah, it's a totally
Well,
different film because the
Everything else is
point, yeah,
go
the
ahead.
point is not about the villain, unfortunately. I
Yeah,
wish
I
it
mean,
was.
it's kind of like the overall, like, it's the old school legends versus like new school tech, and so they lean into that a little bit, right? Oh, the automobile, oh, the machine gun, the whatever the technology of the day that's at the turn of the century from the 1800s to the 1900s, the old school legends trying to figure out this new school technology. But like Europe and somewhat Red Skull or a villain from like Hellboy or whatever, and Europe being on the brink of war versus like the East, Asia, Saudi Arabia, whatever. Like, and I understand why in the early 2000s, post 9/11, why they're not leaning into like the Far East and Middle East as the villains of the day, but they're the whole structure and changing. Um, yeah, there's
Yeah,
some
yeah.
loose plot threads that
There's
are that
still,
are the same, but like in terms of the characters and who are the
yeah.
antagonists and
We're
how you
about to get there. Yeah,
okay. Yep,
but
yep, yep.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah. I mean, it was different. I don't think it's completely different. I am glad, personally, this is the other thing I was going to put back. I'm really glad I saw the movie first. I would recommend people doing that because the comic's too much better than the movie. So I think if you read the comic first, it's going to be hard to enjoy the movie.
That's why it does have a very good score.
I'm
on
also
Rotten
really
Tomatoes.
glad I saw this before I saw Hellboy.
Yeah.
Nothing I could do about that for you listeners. I mean, if you haven't seen Hellboy, I guess, but I feel like everybody's seen it at this point.
The original Hellboy, 2004.
But yeah, I liked Hellboy 2 as well. I like the Golden Army.
The
That
Golden
was pretty
Army?
good.
Yeah.
A few
Yeah.
years
Not the
ago,
reboot.
from-
Not the reboot.
Oh
Yeah.
no.
That
Well,
was
the
good.
reboot had cool monsters. The monsters were actually kind of terrifying.
I do also like the
On
reboot.
positive things.
We saw
I don't think it was as
didn't we see the reboot in theaters together?
together. Yeah.
Yeah. Forgot about that.
Yeah, fun time. Yeah. We'll do that if they make a reboot of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen too, but they're not going to do that.
They should. I like that. I just love the concept.
I
of
agree.
these
love the
I
concept.
agree.
very,
Yeah.
literature, classic literature heroes from the turn of the century in a modern world context of trying to figure that out. But I think it is important to think of like the history of comic books, graphic novels in the moving pictures and what that looks like and where it is and what they're trying to do and capitalize on kind of the trend of the day and where it sits. So
Yeah.
they tried.
I think I'll move on after this, I promise. But I think a lot of like the reason the Hellboy reboot wasn't as well received is because it wasn't made by Guillermo del Toro.
True. Well, also,
That's just following up. That's just a losing game. Is trying to
I feel
follow
like
up on
this
Guillermo
is-
del Toro.
well, this is not a Hellboy episode. I want to do a Hellboy episode. We'll do one soon. But
We will. Yes.
I think partially it's because I'm gonna get a bunch of hate for this. I feel like the reboot was closer to a lot of the comics, and the comics don't work on movie. I think the other director whose name I have a hard time pronouncing, TJ.
Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah. I think he knew that. He knew that going in. He was like, I'm gonna get the characters right, but I'm not gonna even try to make the vibe of that comic fit on the screen because it won't. You know.
Send your mail to Joshua Noel at yahoo.org.
Anyway, so with that, we're going to move forward. We already kind of mentioned this, but one of the big things that they changed in the 2003 film are the characters. And TJ already has broken down who the characters are in the comics, and we have that core characters, but they added a few. So TJ, I'm going to throw it back to you again. Could you kind of tell us about the characters that they added and what part they played in this film?
Okay, give me a minute. Because
all right. And in the meantime, I'll just go ahead and confirm. If you're on the podcast, you don't see the image on screen.
It's great.
But we have
You
an
need to
image
go
that
to
explains
right
why
now.
being American is a superpower. And that's something that we collectively, as systematic ecology, there's not a lot of things we agree on. We don't even agree on like a lot of what people think of as like basic theological statements, but we do all agree that being American is a superpower. That's not
And
true.
we also agree that Christian nationalism is a heresy. So let's just go back to that one.
Yeah, it's a heresy, but it's also being American's a superpower. It
Oh,
doesn't make you Christian.
That's a part of
Superheroes
the
can be
movie.
unchristian.
Yeah, that's a part of the movie that, like, in terms of eye rolling after reading the comic and like knowing Alan Moore and like his British wizardry, and then they got to bring in the American.
Well, this is
but
gonna
this
make
graphic. Let me make a pitch for this graphic. Like, if you're listening just on with your earbuds on the podcast or in your car or whatever, you need to hop over at the 9-minute mark and on YouTube and see this graphic because it's very well done. Did you find this or do this on your own, Joshua?
Oh, I found it. I don't know where I found it, but
Fantastic.
plagiarizing. Yeah.
Yeah.
9-minute mark on part 2. So there'll be 2 parts on YouTube.
Ooh.
And yeah. I like this. We're going to get into it a little bit more, but as a teaser for our bonus question, I understand why they wanted to include an American character in this. I think there's better American literature characters they could have pulled. And that's going to be something I choose for a later thing. It's like what other American would have made more sense on the team? But that's for later. TJ.
Yeah.
Okay, so pretty sure the only ones they added for the movie were AJ Raffles, right? I don't remember him in the book.
Who's AJ Raffles?
Or is he in the second book? No,
I don't know who
I
that is.
didn't rewatch the movie for this, so I'm going off of like an old memory of the movie.
I
Okay.
think it's just Dorian Gray and Tom Sawyer are the ones that they added.
Right. But
Oh.
Dorian Gray, they do like in some images in the graphic novel, they show him up on the wall like as a picture, and his legendary, like they allude to him. Him being a main character in the movie is not a main character in the graphic novel, but they allude to him and his legendary status in the graphic novel. But definitely Tom Sawyer is not in the graphic
TJ,
novel.
could you explain who these two characters are, where they come from, and what part they play in the film?
Nope. That's very, very dense question.
Do you? I mean, you know who Tom
I
Sawyer
haven't seen
is.
the movie in a long time.
You've read Tom Sawyer though.
Yeah. In like middle school, I read Tom Sawyer. By this point, like I know of Tom Sawyer.
Will, can you explain who Dorian Gray and Tom Sawyer is?
Maybe it's
and
been
what
a
role they
long
play in the
time
movie?
since I know about Tom Sawyer. I know he's like a legendary, like.
Should I just explain who Tom Sawyer is?
Yeah, you should. But the fact that he shows up as like a secret agent, Jason Bourne,
it's so
like
dumb.
Captain
Honestly,
no, it's so cool.
Absolutely hilarious.
I love it, but it's
so
dumb.
cool. No, I can explain.
Gray, Dorian Gray is like immortal. He, you have all these like extraordinary gentlemen and a woman, but then you have who's the main character in the graphic novel, but not this movie. But anyway, and so yeah, the whole picture be immortalized in a picture and an image, but then out and about. Yeah. Go ahead. About
I would have never thought the woman was the main character of the comic, just for the record. I would have never picked up on that.
Introduces the whole
What?
thing, and she
she was there, but she was just so uninteresting that I was like, eh.
Yeah, but she's like the only one that's
didn't
always
notice.
there.
Like it makes sense now that you say it. I just would have never noticed because she wasn't interesting.
She does like everything.
Yeah. For me, she felt more like a plot device in the comics. Like she didn't really have a lot of like.
Yeah, she drives the plot. So
yeah, everyone's a plot device. That's how it.
Yeah, but the rest of them have character. She was just there.
Well, she's depressed, dude. She's like an.
Anyway, TJ, what were you gonna say?
Tom Sawyer is the namesake of the best Rush song.
Yeah.
Why did we let you say that? Okay, so Tom Sawyer is the star of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain. And he is a child who is up to a bunch of shenanigans in still racist countryside of America. He tricks some people into painting a fence for him because he's like, oh, this is so much fun. Why don't you give it a try? And he just is up to a bunch of hijinks. It almost feels like the funny comics, but it's a novel. Like I could see the stories of Tom Sawyer just ending up being funny comics in a newspaper, and that's kind of how it's written. Yeah. So it's really interesting that they took that character and said, you know what? Secret agent that likes to shoot things. That's who he is now.
Would you
like the rest of the characters are at least close to their literature counterpart? Nah, not him.
I know you're gonna do it later, but like just some ideas for other American folklore legends that could have been here instead.
Yeah. Please don't ruin mine.
Like Pecos Bill? Is that what you're gonna say?
No. I was really afraid.
Johnny
the one
Appleseed.
that I'm gonna say is probably one you would think of anyone here.
Paul Bunyan.
No. Paul Bunyan would have been cool though. Yes, that would have been
Paul
great.
Bunyan would have been awesome.
Yeah. that would have been fantastic. Oh man. But okay, Will, Dorian Gray. What is he from? What does he do? You were talking about how he's immortal. I forget the name of his books. He shows up in 2 different books, but I don't remember what they are.
I'm pretty sure the first one was just Adventures of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. The second one, I don't remember. I don't know. Am I allowed to say I'm not a big fan of Oscar Wilde's writing style?
Yeah, I mean,
send your hate
why not?
TJ at outlook.com.
We're getting all the hate today. Yeah. I think the book is called The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde.
Because immortalized in a picture, and he's like, what? And again, it asks the question like, what would you like the vampires, like others? What if you were immortal? What if you like death wasn't a thing? What would you do with your time if you don't have finitude as your like sense of urgency to live life to the fullest? What would you do with your time? What would you do with your life? So yeah, that same question is there presented among these people. But I think like amongst the heroes and their superpowers, if you're like lining up, you got the Hulk. Sorry guys. If you got the Hulk with Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, and then you have like Captain America, Tom Sawyer, or the old man Cap with the other dude. Now you have the Wolverine character, the immortal guy who can't be killed, and he heals up, that kind of thing.
Well, I like how they added him because he's kind of a morally gray character in his own book. So it fit the role that they gave him for the film, where spoilers, he was the traitor that was planted amongst them. And I mean, the book, the movie, but it makes sense that they gave him the role they did in the movie, because what they do with comics is so like trippy and comicky and like, mustache twirling bad guy did mustache twirling things, that like it just doesn't work on a movie. Even a movie as campy as this was a really campy movie, but it still just wouldn't have worked if the bad guy got them all together and said, "How'd I get you here? Because I said so." It wouldn't have worked. So they had to have something to kind of fit the pieces together, and I feel like this did the job okay. Not great,
Well,
okay.
You also have the one-line zingers that, like, you have Sean Connery, so that whole like James Bond turn to the camera and go, "Yeah, shot you, catch you next time, buddy," or whatever. Like they had the one-liners.
They were so funny.
Yeah,
watching it now, I was dying.
It was like an Austin Powers movie where he turns to the character, breaks the fourth wall, and like makes like a pun of like whatever there's going on. So yeah, that was over and over and over again with all the action explosions. I was like, wow, they're leaning hard into this.
Yeah, this was Sean Connery's last movie.
What? Really?
This was Sean Connery's last live action movie.
I just gotta say, I actually do really enjoy this movie.
He died in
2020.
But it
I
was
don't know why this was his last movie. He just didn't act after this. This ruined it.
He's like,
for
I'm
him.
done. I'm peaked.
This ruined it for him. He's like, all right. That's funny. I don't know. I do really enjoy the movie, but yeah, like it's all kind of, even the bad guy is still mustache twirling. Like you still have him who is revealed to be Moriarty, and you have him like, "Oh, you thought you had me." Like literally, I think the line literally is, "You thought you had me, but what about Sawyer or whatever?" He's like, "God, you trained him about as well as you did your son." Throws a knife and flies off the cliff, and you're like, "Wow, that was all kind of camp." Like, if we needed like a video demonstration of what we mean when we say camp, there it is.
Yeah.
But it was great. That was so funny.
Like, how can we create a car chase in 1899, 1998? Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to create, it felt like Batman 1989. They try to create these places that look like Gotham, and they're like, "Oh, you know what we could do? We need a Batmobile. Oh, you know what we need? We need this." So that for me was like, oh, I'm looking through the lens of the phases of comic book things, and not necessarily what Alan Moore was doing within the graphic novel itself. There's still that tension of old school, new school, tech, the new generation, what's happening in steampunk, sci-fi, horror. Whatever.
Yeah, the comic was very steampunk.
I will say I love the aesthetic of this movie and comic book.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like there's a lot of things they changed, a lot of stuff that I didn't love in the movie after watching the comic, but I still love the movie mostly for nostalgia's sake, because I watched this as I was pretty young. I was like 10 years old when I watched this, or 11. I don't know.
Yeah.
But like, yeah. So for me, I'm like, cool. Good guys are beating up some bad guys. Yay. Explosions. This is like Michael Bay before I saw a Michael Bay film. It's great.
Yeah. Early 2000s.
But like, even after reading the comic, there are a few things that I'm like, ooh, I like this. Like how they portray the Nauticus. It looks cool. It looks so cool.
The inside, like it has like in terms of like size and scale. I thought they were walking through the TARDIS, but no, it's a big ship. So I get it.
Yeah,
it's a cruise ship.
No,
it's great.
Man, I forgot what I was gonna say. Dang. Boats are cool. No, so when I saw this, I was probably like 9 years old, 8 or 9 years old. But my dad got this from Dollar General as a DVD. So it was just on one day, and I walked in and was watching it. Apparently, he likes this movie a lot. And by this point, the only character I knew, like recognized from whatever, was Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde.
Oh,
so I was like, oh, cool, he got his own movie.
Yeah, me too. When I watched it as a kid, that was the only one that I knew. I was like, yeah. So as like, I even remember looking back, because I just did not remember the movie very well. I remember just different periods of my life being like, what was that movie that they randomly added Dr. Jekyll to? Like, it's just to me, I was like, I just randomly added this guy.
Yeah.
And also, speaking of like our memories of the movie, because like, I told you this is like nostalgia, whatever land for me. Which also, for the record, I wasn't trying to do this episode. And initially, I got in our Discord with the other host and was like, "Who's seen this film?" And Will was like, "I haven't seen it, but I could watch it for an episode." I was like, "We should do an episode." But really, I just wanted to ask people, like, I wanted to tell this fun antidote, and I waited to the episode to tell it after all this.
I love that.
I forget what it was called. I think it was called VidAngel. No, maybe that's what exists now. There was some kind of like Christian film, whatever thing that my parents had, where you could rent a movie. Sorry, give me a second.
Yelling at your dog on mute. I love it.
But no, I forget what it was called. There was some kind of like VidAngel, like VidAngels would exist now. Man, I wish I knew what it was called.
VidAngels.
But it was VidAngel exists now, and it's more legal because you can have VidAngel and use it to watch Netflix or Hulu, and it'll filter things out for you.
Oh,
And it's something that
That's
exists
cool.
currently. But when I was a kid, I forget what it was called, but it was like Redbox, but they took the movie, edited
Redbox.
it, and then sent it out. No, they edited it for this though.
Redbox.
And you could pay to keep the movie, which is why it was initially decided in courts that, yeah, that's not legal. You're just changing an artist's work and then selling it. Which you can do for other things, but this wasn't parody, so you're not allowed to do that. But the yeah, I one of the first movies I remember that weren't a cartoon that I was like able to own for myself was this edited version of The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. That now watching it as an adult, I'm watching this film going, I don't know what they edited out. Like maybe a few crude jokes. Like there wasn't like any sex scenes or anything. I'm like, what?
Yeah, like
What exactly
groping
was edited out in
Invisible Man,
this? Because like they kept
groping.
all the like gory stuff. Like I still saw like this thing that you're like, what the heck is that? I've saw this thing. I saw
Yeah.
Dorian Gray die. What did they edit exactly? They edited Skinner grabbing a girl's butt. Like
Yeah.
the
He does
Invisible
worse
Man
in the graphic
grabbing a
novel.
butt.
He does worse in the graphic novel.
It
Oh,
does
yeah.
a lot worse in the graphic novel.
Oh yeah.
A lot
I
worse.
also I did want to talk about that. Like, well, and also it's a different character, right?
Different
Like it's
character.
not Skinner. It was the actual Invisible Man, and I think that's part of why they changed it for the film. Was not just copyright stuff with Universal, but I think part of it was also we don't want that guy in our movie. That guy was just
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
But again, back to the plot, like them stealing like certain aspects of their powers to use it as to team up their own people as weapons with this mass like empire of tanks and machine guns. I think that aspect of stealing their powers and siphoning off so they can use it so they can have this big battle in the end. Like that's classic like superhero comic book movie stuff that I thought was good. And then the villain going like, there will be others like me. You can't kill the future. And you're like, yeah, you're right. Like things progress, technology happens, and AI is right around the corner. You can't kill the future.
And doesn't this also take place before
2024.
World War II?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that like part of the point? So like he's
of it.
right. There is
World
about
War
to
I.
be a World War II.
and World War One? Like no, it's like
Yeah.
the turn of the century. It's like to turn from 1800s to 1900s. Yeah.
But also, this is like really the real point of the episode was we wanted to warn everybody. So you guys thought that the MCU was a problem now. What you didn't know is the MCU formula was a problem years before the MCU started. This was when it started. You had that like star power character. You had, we're going to just make bad versions of the good guys. You had everything that we complained about the MCU formula right here. Marvel's been doing it for years before Marvel movies were even like popular. It's crazy. And this is not a Marvel movie for the record.
Guess what? There's formulas in the graphic novels and comics.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah. But also they did rely very heavily on that star power part of it of the, hey, Sean Connery, everybody likes him, right? Let's make a movie about him and we'll just use this graphic novel.
Yeah. I think my personal favorite comic formula is Green Lantern wins because he is strong-willed.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Never get tired of
That
it.
is one of my favorite Spider-Man plots.
Can I change my name from Ordinary Will to like Strong Willed? Can I do that?
Yeah, strong-willed.
Rename stuff.
But So we talked about some of the changes. We talked about some of like the campiness, other just like quirky things in the film, what characters were added. Overall, how do we enjoy the film? Like, if you had to rate it 0 to 10, do you still think it's a good movie? I'm gonna go first this time, and I'm gonna give it 2 ratings. I'm gonna rate it once, like seriously, like if I'm actually evaluating it for real, probably giving this like a 3 out of 10. If I'm evaluating it as like how much I actually enjoy it, probably a 6 or a 7. I enjoy it more than your average, and for me, 5 is average. Just because like there's all this nostalgia, there's all the explosions, cool fighting scenes. The ship looks freaking cool. I like Nemo there. I actually really appreciate that they showed like some of the Hindu worship stuff, and like they didn't just make it like, oh, he's a bad guy. Like there's a lot of stuff I really enjoy in the movie, even though I'm able to look at it and go, yeah, this really isn't a good movie. But man, I do enjoy it. TJ, how would you rate this one?
Okay, it has been a while, but none of the bad stuff I remembered, which says to me that it is better than it is bad.
That's fair. That's fair.
Put that on the movie.
5.5.
This movie is better than it is bad. Quote unquote.
So I'll give it a 6.
All right. Will.
I want that on a movie poster.
Better than it is bad. When they started, I'm gonna enjoy movie posters a lot more when they start enjoying, like, including quotes by TJ about the film.
Yeah.
Like, it's like honest movie posters.
Yeah.
So for this episode,
if
Joshua,
anyone's listening, if anyone is listening, you can send me a review copy of your movie. I will give you a comment.
Give you a quote.
Powerful quote. I think that name of this episode should be "This podcast is better than it is bad." So just that in that title, please just put that up there. This is better than it is. No, I like that. Like, yeah, I think right now going back and rewatching, I have to have 2 different ratings. Like as a movie as itself and what it does and its pacing and editing and the cheesy one-liners, it's a pretty bad movie. Like, you're right, it's a 3 or 4. But like in terms of seeing it in its context of superhero movie history and like just having fun with it and watching it, like ironically, I will give it a 6 or 7. Like it's pretty fun. You know, I can go back and watch it. Yeah,
I do recommend everybody
now
watch
knowing
it.
that it's Sean Connery's last movie, dude. Like it needs to like hold up there.
Yeah,
Bond himself. Like here we go. God.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely recommend people checking it out if they haven't. Last thing before we go, and I know this is a longer one, but hey, it was a 2-parter. You guys should have known it was going to be longer. In the film, we mentioned they kind of switched the main character up, even though I didn't know who the main character of the comic was apparently, but I did know it wasn't Quartermain.
Right.
And in the movie, it did feel like Quartermain is like he is the main character, and they're kind of showing him like struggle with like his inner demons and like some of his past and this kind of stuff. How do you guys think the movie handled his past and the demons that he carries with him in this new story?
What is his demon? Remind me what his demons are. I know what his demons are in the comic, but like what would you
I think they're going off of the literature bits too, but it's basically he blames himself for his son's death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he's able to pass on to a new son, Tom Sawyer, like pass.
Yeah, Tom Sawyer. Just like what we all expected. Whenever you read the old novels, I'm sure the first thing you thought was, I bet Alan Quartermain goes to America and finds Tom Sawyer and mentors.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of how they wrote the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
I mean, God wrote.
Anyway, we'll save this conversation.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think like he's a big game hunter. There's this kind of window snapshot, 2003 idea of colonization of Africa, and you know the Europeans are making better buildings and better technology, and like he regrets burying a couple of wives and loves of his life, and reflecting, you know, and then his call, the vocation, the call outside himself to come help, you know, the long live the queen and the empire or whatever, you know. I think that's there, and then he knows he's older. He's on the sunset aspect of or version of era of his life, and he's got to pass it on to the next one. There's a weird way that it ends, whether this witch doctor with superpowers is going to bring him back to life and raise from the dead. I don't know.
I'm hoping,
yeah.
I'm hoping a witch doctor raises him from the dead, then he goes to fight some aliens.
Right. So yeah, I think, you know, they try, but But even that one liner of Wilhelmina, who's like, she's like extraordinary men and a woman, so she's leaning in like there is a female here. There's one female, but it's part of the graphic novel too.
Yeah. She's a cool character. I think I still feel like she's portrayed cooler in the movie than she is in the comic.
Okay.
But
you have to read the comic, folks out there, to
I don't-
see if Josh is right or wrong.
I don't think she's portrayed as lame in the comics.
Yeah, but she doesn't eat people. I need more eating of people. Well, I guess she later on, but like it takes a while. She's not as actiony.
It doesn't go.
I mean, it's like
she does in the movie.
Yeah, that's what I need.
No, it's like chapter 2 when they hear about like Jekyll and Hyde, and she's like,
True.
I can take care of this myself, and just like goes to look for him with a gun.
Yeah, but she wasn't very. I just don't feel like she did.
Well,
that
no, it
much
was like
in helping get him. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. I think if I divorce it from the comics and the stories and the characters, and I just look purely at like the bone structure of it, like completely deconstruct and go, a man who was once thought of as a hero, trying to live and die alone because he lives with this regret about his son, meeting someone who needs to learn how to be a hero and trying to mentor them. I like the beat. I like the beat of like, hey, even if you don't get it right with your family isn't just blood, and you can still pass something on to the next generation. Like that's cool. How they did it, but the idea, yeah, sure.
Joshua, I just need you to know that if you can't do it with one bullet, you're doing it wrong.
That's true.
Well, I don't know if it's true, but like that's definitely what Quartermain thinks.
Listen, here's what I know. I was going to say, I can't tell my wife. She's not going to listen to a podcast. And if she does, she's certainly not listening this long. And when we have gone to play laser tag, she has that strategy of, I'm going to hit the trigger over and over and over and over because you don't run out of bullets.
Yeah.
I just hit people when I shoot them. And I always win. Always win.
All right, there's that strategy. That's
so,
not a bad argument there.
I feel like just aiming works better than pulling the trigger a lot.
I feel like you should just do both.
You can do both, and that does work better than either.
Laser tag, you should just do both.
That's true. The TJ beats both of us.
Because
he takes the time to aim and then pulls the trigger over and over and over.
I need laser tag the movie. Let's do it.
There we go.
That's like a live action. It's like a live action Disney thing. That's like a TV movie. Disney from like.
Listen, here's what we need. We need Scotty Young to show up like he did with the Guardians. Like, I'm gonna just take a couple of the characters and make some silly spin-off comics. Yeah. And maybe have some fun, some like real stories, but mostly it's just going to be fun stuff. And he just decided, you know what? Mr. Hyde and Quartermain go to play laser tag. And that's what we get. I would watch, I would read Scotty Young making that comic for some reason.
Or Joshua, TJ, and Will go to play laser tag. We get sucked into an extra dimensional portal, and then we're like in real laser. We have to figure out what that means.
Yeah.
Well, now that we've gone off the rails completely, it's time to wrap. So, wrapping up, going to let everybody know what the bonus question is ahead of time. We're going to be asking for our supporters, whether they're on Patreon, Captivate, or Apple Podcast. You can hear us answer the question. If you were to add any other famous literature characters to the team, who would you have chosen? So if we were to add our own two, which two would we have
right now? Should I answer right
now?
now?
No. This is just for our supporters. Just for
Sherlock Holmes.
Captivate now.
Oh man,
that is. I have thoughts on that, but we'll talk about that in part 1. But hey, before anything else, let's give a recommendation. Other comics, games, anime, whatever you think would be a good recommendation for those listening as we wrap up. Just because we mentioned Hellboy so many times, I'm gonna go back to a oldie but a goodie. Hellboy in Hell, Mike Mignola. If you're gonna read like comic books as like real literature, that's it right there. Beautiful story, great art. Check it out.
Joshua Bingo.
TJ.
So, I was just gonna say Elden Ring, but
TJ Bingo. Yeah.
Relevant. There's some relevance here. If you really like the aesthetic, if you're a big fan of steampunk, diesel punk, the comic and the movie respectively, and you play games, you have to play Dishonored. Dishonored is gorgeous, like semi-steampunk, gorgeous world, and If you've already played Dishonored and you're upset that I didn't give you a new one, go play Divine Cybermancy. Super old game, fantastic steampunk aesthetic. It's really fun.
All right. This is like a real recommendation. Now I actually want to check it out because TJ's recommendations usually are just whatever he said earlier. Yeah.
Cool.
Will.
My recommendation is I'm way behind on my comics, way behind on my reading, way behind on like my TV shows. But I will say that I have appointment television with My Adventures with Superman on Max, and the kind of Avatar Last Airbender anime / animated Superman stories is so good. Season 2, we're halfway through it. It's amazing. I love it. It's charming. It's funny. It's moving. I love that cartoon.
All right. Well, there you have it, guys. Check that stuff out. And hey, if you're listening on the podcast on Spotify, you can go hit like the 3 little dot thing and rate the show. Give us 5 stars. Helps other people find the show. If you're on Apple Podcast, rate and review. That helps them find the show. But if you want to help us the most and you're on a laptop, go to podchaser.com, rate and review there. That really helps the algorithms find us, and we really appreciate it. And of course, if you are on YouTube, we need you to smash that like and subscribe button, because if you don't smash those buttons, you're smashing Will's heart, and no one wants that. We all care about Will's health. So for Will, smash that like and subscribe button. All right, guys. Also, we want to give another shout out. Again, thank you, Daniel Sigmund, for being one of the people who support this show. We couldn't do this without people like Daniel. You rock, man. And remember, everybody, we're all a chosen people, a geekdom, a priest.